Hi guys, there's 2 pages to this one. They're sort of half sheets, but not really, but they are cut out for you. And this one's about similar figures and finding scale factor between them. So in middle school, we learned about similar figures. And remember, with similar figures, that they're the same size, but they're not necessarily, hold on, I said that wrong. Remember, with similar figures, they're the same shape, but not necessarily the same size. So, there's a couple of rules that we have to know in order for 2 figures to be similar. And the first one is that the corresponding angles have to be congruent. Corresponding angles must be congruent. So we normally write that as that congruent symbol like this, which is an equals with a line, a squiggly over it. That means congruent. And then that's an angle sign with an S. So that stands for congruent angles. The other thing that has to be true in order for them to be similar is that the corresponding sides must be proportional. So on the last lessons, you were learning about proportions and how to solve proportions, and what that just means is that we have equal ratios or equal fractions. Okay? Equal ratios or equal fractions. So what I said in the beginning, that I said it backwards, but the figures must be the same shape, but not necessarily the same size. So the reason that we say not necessarily the same size is because that 2 figures that are exactly the same size are actually still considered similar figures. Okay? So the symbol to show that figures are similar is just the little squiggly line. So congruent means the same exactly, and similar means same shape, but not necessarily the same size. So they have the same little squiggly line, but this one means that they're equal and as well. Okay? So that's the symbol to show that 2 figures are similar. It's a little squiggly line. Okay? Alright, so let's talk about what corresponding means, okay? And we already talked about corresponding angles when we talked about like the parallel lines. And so like remember when we had these lines here and we said that these were corresponding angles, and it's because they're in the same place on the line? Well, it's the same thing when we talk about corresponding sides. So the big thing is, and we've already sort of done this before also, but we want to match up the angles together. So what I like to do is take a highlighter and highlight my angles so I can see them. And we did this once before in a previous unit when we talked about congruent triangles. Okay? So this is just going to help us match up our sides and our angles. Angles are easy, so let's talk about corresponding angles. So we'll say that angle A is congruent to angle W. That they're corresponding and they're congruent because corresponding angles must be congruent. That was the rule. Angle B is congruent to angle X. Angle Y is congruent to angle C. Whoops, I put that out of order, but it doesn't matter. And then the last one, angle D, is congruent to angle Z. I don't know what happened to my table here either. Okay, so those are my corresponding angles. Now to figure out my sides, I want to make sure I'm listing them by following along with where the angles are. So this was yellow and green, so I want to go yellow-green. So AB, side AB, actually, what do we know about the sides? Are they congruent? No. Sides must be proportional, which means we need to make ratios or fractions. So I'm going to take side AB and I'm going to put it over side WX. And that gets me, side AB is 15, side WX is 5. So 15 over 5. And when I simplify that, I get 3. 15 divided by 5 is 3. Okay. Alright, now let's look at the next side. It's side BC. And that BC is pink, is green pink, so we're going to go green pink. Green pink is XY. And that's going to be 12, and this XY is 4. 12 divided by 4 is 3. Let's do the next one. Side DC, that's blue pink, so blue pink, ZY. That's 21 over 7. 21 divided by 7 is 3. And then the last one, AD, goes with WZ. And that's 18 over 6, which is 18 divided by 6, which is 3. So you can see they are all equal to, all these fractions simplify to 3. So that must mean that the sides are proportional and the angles are congruent, therefore they are similar. So we would say ABCD, yellow, green, pink, blue, is similar to yellow, green, pink, blue, WXYZ. Okay, and order matters when we write our similar figures out. Alright, so let's go ahead and write our ratios of sides and ratios of angles. It said list all the pairs of congruent angles and write a proportion that relates them. So to tell which angles are congruent, see these aren't facing the same direction, so to tell which ones are congruent, we have to look at the statement that we started with. And so what I would do here is I would take my highlighter and I would highlight A goes with X, so that means this angle goes with this angle. And I would mark them both on the problem up here and also on the actual picture so that I can keep track. And then it says B goes with Y, so I'm going to mark B goes with Y. And then it also says that C goes with Z, so I'm going to mark C goes with Z. Okay? And so now it should be way easier to list our congruent angles. So our congruent angles are, angle A is congruent to angle X, because they're both yellow. Angle B is congruent to angle Y, because they're both green. And angle C is congruent to angle Z, because they're both pink. And now we just need to write our ratios of sides. Okay? So our first ratio of sides, let's say ratio of sides. So our first one, let's do side AB goes over top of side what? Well, it's yellow, green, so yellow, green, XY. Then we say side AC goes over top of side what? AC is yellow, pink, so we're going to say yellow, pink, or XZ. And lastly, we have side CB, and that's going to go over top of what? So CB is pink, green, so ZY is pink, green, ZY. And so that would be our ratios of our sides. Okay? So the big idea from this page is what identifies a similar figure. They have to have congruent angles and they have to have proportional sides. So we have to write ratios of sides and congruent angles to show it. Okay? The next page is talking about scale factor. So to find scale factor, you must write a ratio, okay? So scale factor is a ratio. It means the number that you multiply by to get to the next figure. So scale factor is what you multiply to get the new figure. By the way, we call the new figure the image. Okay? The new figure is the image. Okay? So, the scale factor depends on the order of comparison. The scale factor depends on the order of comparison. Remember, if I'm writing too fast, go ahead and push pause. Okay? Alright. The order of comparison, what that means is what order am I going from? Am I going from the big to the small, or am I going from the small to the big? Okay? In these two examples, they're telling us to go from left to right. Okay? So just keep that in mind. So to make a ratio, to make scale factor, you just make a fraction of corresponding sides. Remember that order matters. Okay? Remember that order matters. So, let's look at example 1. To find the scale factor in example 1, we have to match up our corresponding sides. Okay? Okay. Sorry, I had to go back and look at something because I think I missed some stuff on here. So one thing that I want to add to this problem is that we were talking about the image, okay? And the image is going to be the new figure. So in example 1, we're going to call this one the image. Okay? Because we're saying we're going from left to right. So this is the image because it's the new figure. It's the resulting figure after I applied some scale factor. And what we're doing is we're trying to figure out what do we multiply by to get to the new side. So it's completely obvious if you look at this example that AC has to go with GD because it's the side across from this right looking angle that we see. So we're trying to say, what number do I multiply 16 by to get to this 4? What's the number I multiply 16 by to get 4? Okay? So to get that number, what we're going to do is we're going to write a fraction. And so we're going to put the new length over the old length in order to get that fraction. Okay? So in example 1, the new length over the old length, what's the new length? The new length is 4, and the old length is 16. So we do 4 over 16, and then we go to our calculator and we type in 4 divided by 16. And we push enter. That gets us a decimal, and we want it to be a fraction, so we're going to push math enter, enter, and end it up with that simplified form, which is 1/4. Okay? So 4 over 16 equals 1/4. So my scale factor is 1/4. Okay? And now we can test to see if this actually works. Okay? That's my scale factor. So we can take this 16 right here, and if I multiply it by 1/4, I should end up getting 4. So let's try that out. So go to your calculator and you type 16 times, and then it's alpha y equals enter, right? To get the fraction. So alpha y equals enter 1/4. So if I do 16 times 1/4, I want it to come out as 4. So let's see. There it is. It worked. So 1/4 is the scale factor between AC and GD. Now, look at your other two sides. How could you figure out what side goes with what? By how long the sides are. So the next biggest side on here is AT, which is 12, and it's going to go with which other side? Well, 3 and 2 are my lengths. 12 and 8 are my lengths. So 12 is bigger than 8, so then the side that it goes with on this one is going to be the 3. So we're going to say, does 12 times 1/4 get me 3? Let's check. 12 times 1/4 equals, and check it on your calculator. So 12 times alpha y equals enter 1/4. Does that get me 3? Yes. So I can pretty much tell just by looking at those first two, does that get me, does a scale factor of 1/4, is it true? Yes. Alright, so let's look at example 2. It says that we have this one and this one. What is the new image called, or what is the new triangle called? What do we call that? The result after I applied a scale factor, what is this one called? It's called the image. Okay? Alright, So let's figure out what number do I have to multiply by to get to the new number. So I'm saying 10 times what gets me 15. Okay? Alright, so to do that, we do new over the old. So how long is the new one? 15. And what about the old one? 10. And then how do I simplify that? You go to your calculator, 15 divided by 10, enter, and then you push math, enter, enter, and you get 3 over 2. So my scale factor is 3 over 2. Let's check it and see if it actually goes. So let's say, does 6 times 3 over 2 get me 9? So do 6 times 3 over 2. Remember to get that fraction, it's alpha y equals enter. Yes, it gets me 9. So I always want to check to make sure that I'm getting the right scale factor when I'm done. Okay? So, if you look, this scale factor is less than 1. A scale factor less than 1, I'm going to abbreviate scale factor as SF. So if scale factor is less than 1, what is happening to my image? Is it getting bigger or is it getting smaller? So if I multiply this by 1/4, I'm making it smaller. So if the scale factor is less than 1, then the image is smaller. That's kind of an important piece of information. Here, if my scale factor is bigger than 1, see 3 over 2, that's 1.5, right? So if my scale factor is greater than 1, then the image gets larger. Okay. So scale factor bigger than 1, the image gets larger. Scale factor smaller than 1, the image gets smaller. At this point you have finished your notes, and I'd like for you to glue these into your notebook on the same page as each other. Make sure that you glue this one all the way down, and then you glue this one up so that it has a little flap on that same page in your notebook. And then I'd like for you to pause the video and grab this homework assignment, or this classwork assignment if you haven't already. There are a few questions on it that I would like to do with you before you complete the rest of the assignment. So please push pause if you haven't grabbed this page yet. Alright, so let's turn it over. I want to look at number 11, okay? It says that the two polygons are similar, and they want you to write a proportion and then solve for x. So what we're going to do here is we're going to compare the sides. I'm going to get my colors, and I know that this side goes with this side because the angles are the same. And that's not what I meant to say sides, I meant to say angles. And that this angle goes with this angle, and lastly I know this angle goes with this angle. And the reason that I'm marking the angles is so that I can definitely tell where the sides are that are the same, okay? They're not the same, but that are supposed to be proportional. So 5 is in between blue and yellow, and x is also in between blue and yellow. And the reason that I started with this is because if I'm going to write a proportion and solve for x, then I need to make sure that x is part of my proportion. So I'm always going to start with finding the x and finding the side that corresponds with it. So I'm going to say that 5, I can write this ratio as 5 over x, just like what we did in our notes. 5 over x equals, and then I just need to pick another side. Either of the other two sides will work, it doesn't matter. So I'm just going to pick this 2, which is in between yellow and green, and this 1, which is also in between yellow and green. So we say 2 over 1. And so now I've written my proportion, and now I just need to figure out what x is. So remember, to solve proportions, we cross multiply. So we say x times 2, or 2x, equals 5 times 1, or 5. And then we just divide. Divide by 2, so you get x equals 2.5. So on this problem, we wrote a proportion, we found where x was, we wrote our proportion by making a ratio of 5 and x, and then picking another two sides that correspond and writing our second ratio. So that's how you do 12 and 13. Then it says on 14, 15, 16, and 17, you're supposed to write a similarity statement and then find the scale factor and then write proportions and solve for the missing links. So there's a lot of things that they're asking you to do here, but let's start with write the similarity statement. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to mark our angles that correspond with each other. So L corresponds with Q, K corresponds with R, and J corresponds with P. Okay? So, now we're going to write our similarity statement. So that means we say triangle, and then we just write our letters. I'm going to go in alphabetical order, so JKL is similar. Remember, the similar is this little squiggly. And then triangle, so it was yellow, blue, green. Yellow, blue, green. So PRQ. Okay. Then it says to find the scale factor. So remember, the scale factor is going to be, I abbreviate that as SF. So you're going to do new over the old. So let's just do this side here between the yellow and the blue. So 20 is new. Old is X. Oh, we can't really find scale factor if that's X right there, right? So we're going to go pick a different side. So let's pick 12. 12 is between the green and the blue. So we say 12 over 18. And then we go to our calculator and divide. 12 divided by 18. Get a decimal. Push math, enter, enter. Get a fraction, 2/3. Look at your scale factor. Does it make sense? This is less than 1. Is my triangle getting smaller? Yes. Okay, now it says to find x and y. So let's start off by finding x. So we say x over 20 equals x over 20 equals. Now, if I did 21, it corresponds with y, and I'm not going to be able to figure out if I do 21 and y. So let's do this instead. Let's do the 18 and the 12. So it was x over 20, so I have to put the 18 over the 12. Okay, you have to go in the same order when you're solving. And then you just cross multiply. So this is 12x equals 20 times 18. And then you just solve for x. So 20 times 18 is 360. And then you just divide. So x equals 30. Okay. Now we need to solve for y. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to find y, and we're going to write our fraction. So it's 21 over y. I'll do it over here. 21 over y equals, and now I'm going to pick the same original fraction, 18 over 12, that we picked here. So 21 over y and 18 over 12. And then you just cross multiply. 18y equals 21 times 12. So 18y equals 21 times 12 is 252. Then you just divide. So y equals 14. Alright, so hopefully I've helped you through enough of problem 14, 15, 16, and 17 to get you to the end of this worksheet here. The front side should be pretty similar to what you did in the notes, and then these are just a couple of examples to help you figure out and solve for missing links. Thanks for watching and have a wonderful day.